Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the IRS Radio Hour with Stephen Leahy. Every Sunday afternoon at 5 on AM 560, The Answer.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
We're at McConnell's house. This think he's about to get some rest. Not if the children that you're kidnapping can't get any rest. Not if families who are getting murdered can't get any rest. Mitch! Ditch Mitch! Ditch Mitch! This is this house. Come out, Mitch! He's in there nursing his little broken arm. He should have broke his little raggedy, wrinkled neck.
Good morning, Dan and Kristen McQuarrie, Chicago Tribune editorial board member in for Amy J. And that was a group of policymakers that had gathered outside Mitch McConnell's house and suggested that legislation be drafted to, quote, stab the MFer in the heart, unquote.
Yeah, I heard that. Sounded like a really intelligent discussion.
Yeah, so we're engaged in this national conversation about policy with respect to gun rights, with respect to mental health, and the proposals that are being offered by POTUS candidates and legislative leaders on the Hill from Democrats are ones you've heard before, not just Democrats either. Pagliacci, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, please, never Majority Leader, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, with Republican Congressman Peter King, talking about universal background checks yesterday.
Today, Peter King, a Republican, myself, a Democrat, are here to say enough is enough. We are calling on Leader McConnell to bring the bill that passed the House that Peter King bravely sponsored to the floor of the Senate ASAP. If that bill comes to the floor of the Senate, I believe it will pass.
All right, that's the universal background check. Here's Creepshow Joe with Anderson Cooper talking about his record on the topic of banning quote-unquote assault weapons and supporting another tried and true Democrat proposal, gun buybacks.
You're in support of background checks, universal background checks.
Universal background checks.
You're in support of an assault weapons ban.
I was able to get one passed.
Right, in 1994, the assault weapons ban. The final studies, though, on the assault weapons ban that people point to say it basically was kind of inconclusive. They said there were so many guns, so many assault-type weapons already on the market that it didn't really have a demonstrable effect on the reduction in crime which occurred. There was a reduction in crime, but they can't point at the assault weapons ban.
That's true, but look, here's a simple proposition. Let's assume it's all absolutely accurate. Do we want to continue it? Does anybody think it made any sense that someone's able to walk into a gun store, buy an assault weapon that has multiple rounds, or buy an assault weapon that has 100 rounds, even though it may not, you can't point to the fact that it in fact had stopped it before. Do you want more of them on the street? Do we want to do that?
So to gun owners out there who say, well, a Biden administration means they're going to come for my guns.
Bingo. You're right if you have an assault weapon.
Yeah. I guess I'm sort of agnostic on the topic as long as the gun is in the hands of a law-abiding, peace-loving individual. All right, one more Republican to hear from. He's the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, of course, responding to what he's aiming to do at the state level in reaction to the Dayton shooting.
We have to empower people to get help for family or loved ones who may be a danger to themselves or a danger to others. People who have mental health challenges, alcohol or drug problems, that have violent tendencies, and have access to firearms.
All right, so there's a coverage of some of the hot topics right now. Background checks, buybacks, bans, and red flag laws. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Todd Vandermyde, he of the Federal Firearm Licensees of Illinois Association. Todd, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you guys.
So, there's nothing new here, particularly for somebody in the industry like yourself. But if you could just sort of comment on the universal background check, which I think is sort of lightly understood in the general public, just exactly the extent of background checks that are already in place per federal law and the redundancies in states like Illinois.
Sure. Under federal law, anytime you buy a firearm at retail from a federal firearms licensee, you undergo a background check. And the federal system is called NICS, National Instant Criminal Check System. And the federal licensee calls into the FBI. They bounce your name off 4 or 5 databases to see if you are a prohibited person. That system failed in Aurora when the databases were not talking to each other, because when they ran it through a different database, it turned up after the fact. But that was a problem that occurred with the DOJ in Aurora. In Illinois, we also have what's called the FTIC system, the Firearms Transfer Inquiry Program. Every time an individual dealer sells a firearm, they contact the state of Illinois, they run their databases, then they turn around and run it through the Department of Justice system, and that's what it is. Illinois requires the FOID card. So to merely possess or own a firearm or ammunition, you have to have the FOID card. Doesn't seem to be slowing down any of the violence in Chicago, because it's not lawful gun owners who are doing the violence that's happening there. By and large, these are people who can't get FOID cards, can't legally possess a firearm. So there's that. What they try to do, with the term universal background checks, is now they want to go after every private transfer. So if you were selling Kristen a gun, they want to put that into the system. And the only way you really achieve part of that is by, turning it into a de facto registry, by keeping records on Dan sold Kristen a gun and things of that nature. So, it gets to be, there's more devil in the details than there are just, this catchy bumper sticker slogan of universal background checks. And then the other part of the federal bill that passed the House that they don't want to talk about, is that currently under federal law, the feds have 3 days to provide a response. Illinois is one of 7 states that has a waiting period when it comes to long guns. If there's no response from the feds, federal law says that transfer can take place. Now they want to up that and, jack that up. So the question becomes, how long do you have to wait for the federal system to turn around and give an all clear or an approval, and not just a delayed reaction?
Can you talk about, Dan says there really is no loophole in terms of internet sales, gun shows. There's just so much data that I'm looking at that disputes that. So what's the deal? And I obviously realize Illinois has tougher gun laws, but do other states still have these loopholes? I mean, why is there all this data out there?
Well, it depends on how you define a loophole, Kristen.
Well,
so,
take away loophole. Take away
loophole. Board is overly fair about a lot of this stuff. So if you want to talk about internet sales, if I put an ad on GunBroker and I want to sell a firearm as a private party, I can only sell a firearm to somebody who resides in my state. If I sell it to you who lives in another state, it must, by federal law, go through a gun dealer. That law, so let's say that you and I were related, and you lived in Colorado and I lived in Illinois, and I wanted to give you a shotgun for Christmas. Even as a sister, aunt, uncle, whatever it is, that must, under federal law, go through a federal firearms licensee. You cannot make a transfer from person to person across state lines. So the question is, what's an internet loophole? Is it because I put it on GunBroker and you and I both live in Illinois and you contacted me and we met somewhere and we found you have a FOID card, I checked if the insurance valid, turned around, followed the waiting period, and all of a sudden, we made a transfer. Is that the internet loophole, or is it the fact that If it goes across state lines, it's illegal unless it goes through an FFL. If it goes through an FFL, there has to be a federal background check. So what's the loophole?
Well, do all states have a FOID card system that like we do in Illinois? And
No.
do gun
Well,
buyers
of
have
course,
to
it's
double
a
check with law
ridiculous
enforcement
system.
like they do here? So are there states with looser gun laws that would be impacted by a universal background check system that would pull some of these unlicensed dealers more into mainstream?
There are a lot of other states that don't have the redundant systems. The question is, what you're akin to saying is it would be illegal to sell a car unless you went to a licensed dealer. It's not the way, selling private property normally works.
Well, and the other thing,
But,
too, is
the federal law currently is that no matter what, if it crosses state lines, it has to go through a licensee. It's what happens when you're inside the state of Indiana. If you and I are both Indiana residents and it's a private sale, that's business between us. The question is, when do you want, how far do you want government to get into that? And if you want government to now regulate those private transfers.
Well, right. And so, wait, Todd, hold on a second. Todd, hold on.
To trade firearms.
Todd,
I don't have to contact the government in order for me to give him a shotgun for Christmas, or because he decides he wants to buy one of my guns. I now have to contact the federal government to say, however you want to structure this. The question is, how much government do you want in a private transaction?
Well, that's right. So I want to make sure we get the nomenclature here. There is no such thing as an unlicensed dealer, because it's not like I can just say every transaction. I'm going to buy a bunch of guns and then I'm going to start selling them off, at a volume that a retailer would. But I'm not going to license myself because I'm just going to say everything's an arm's length transaction. It's just all my friends. You can't get away with that. So there's no such thing as an unlicensed dealer. There's such a thing as a transfer of property between me and my dad. But that doesn't make me a dealer. And so the question is, do you want to treat individual transactions like that between me and my father as I'm a gun dealer and my father is a customer? That's the question. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely right, Dan, because the issue is the law allows you to liquidate your collection. You'll amass 200 firearms because that was your thing, and now you're deciding that was your retirement. You're going to liquidate your collection. You're not a dealer. Are you spending time and attention with the attempt to make a profit off of it is the way the federal law reads. Now, Illinois has run 50% of the FFLs out of business with their latest gun dealer licensing scheme because they didn't think it was enough to have a federal license. You now have to have the state certificate. And being a licensed FFL myself, we were supposed to comply with this law. We did everything we were. State said they've got 30 days to get back to us. We're past our 30-day mark, and we still don't have a certificate from the state saying everything's copacetic. We're allowed to operate because that's what the law says, that we can operate unless the state issues a revocation notice. We received no such notice, but they can't get FOID cards processed properly. They can't get carry license processed properly in the time frame allotted. So it goes back to the background check stuff. State police cannot issue FOID cards in the now 60 business days that they are allotted. They can't issue carry licenses in the 90 to 120 days they're allotted. They cannot issue FFL certificates in the 30 days they're allotted. So what am I supposed to do when I have a customer come in? He has a FOID card that's expired. He applied in a timely manner. State police tell me I'm supposed to go ahead and sell that individual a firearm and put down on a 4473 an expired FOID card. I'm not going to do that. Most of the FFLs I know won't do that because you're going to sit there and tell the ATF, if they inspect you, that you just sold somebody a gun with an expired ID.
So do you not...
That's how screwed up the system is right now. And now, if you take Kirsten's position, where you want to introduce private sales into this, how long is somebody supposed to have to wait to exercise a fundamental right?
Do you not...
I think we should put a 7-day waiting period on any editorial that comes out of the Chicago Tribune so we can fact check it.
couple things. One, we are Second Amendment supporters. We did not support the gun shop bill that recently got signed. But I also get in my inbox every day from the U.S. Attorney's Office examples of people illegally trafficking guns in Illinois. And maybe you think this is not a widespread problem, or maybe the fact that it eventually results in federal charges is proof that the system is working. But I'm looking at a press release from a month ago about a guy in Tinley Park, unlicensed, had hundreds of weapons at his home, trading them, selling them at a forest preserve. I mean, is this not, we're not worried about you buying a Christmas present for Dan. The issue is people like this, and
one,
how do they, there's just no way to keep up with trying to catch people like this guy in Tinley Park.
Well, wait a minute. If the U.S. Attorney's Office caught this guy, bravo for them. That's what we want to see.
Well, that's what I'm
If
saying, but they
he's
can't keep up with
trafficking or trying to profit off of that volume, then yes, he should have an FFL, and if he doesn't, he should be prosecuted. We're all for that. But how come I read stories about somebody pulled over with multiple firearms in their car? They have felony convictions, and he gets out on $1,000 bond in the Cook County criminal justice system.
That's a huge problem too.
We see these I-bonds and things like that for the people who are committing the violence that goes on.
It's all reactive, though.
You have the daily stuff we see in Chicago, that we read the body counts on Monday morning like the sports page, and then you have the lone gunmen that pull incidents like they did in Dayton and El Paso. And there's two different types here that you deal with. But you have a few. You have straw purchasers. I wrote the Illinois law that never gets used in Cook County to prosecute people. We did that as a means to make sure local prosecutors had the tools available to them when the feds don't want to prosecute because it's not a big enough case. I've yet to see it used in Cook County.
I just want to know, I mean, everything that we've talked about is reactive. Like this guy in Tinley Park, he'd been doing this for years. Who knows how many weapons he sold that ended up in the wrong hands. We know all the stories of Chucks in Riverdale. We know that we don't have enough prosecution. We don't have enough prosecution of UUWs. What is the answer to trying to keep weapons out of the hands of people like in Chicago, who are getting these illegally, probably through straw purchases, and also coming from places nearby us, like Indiana, that don't have as strict gun laws?
Well, number one, 60% of the guns being picked up in Chicago are coming from out of state. So how is the Illinois General Assembly supposed to change that? How is the FOIA card doing anything to impact that? How is the 72-hour waiting period doing anything to impact that? How is attempting to jack up FOIA cards to over $100 and put a poll tax on our right doing anything about that? How is the dealer licensing bill doing anything about that? The fact is it's not.
I agree with all of that. So what?
So the question is, how many restrictions are you wanting to put on an individual's right to own a firearm for self-defense in their own home? I mean, the bill working its way through the legislature now originally wanted to jack FOIA cards up to $100.
I know.
Now
we're talking about Illinois, and I understand that Illinois is super restrictive.
ID to vote, but I'm supposed to supply fingerprints and pay the $75 that goes along with that, so I can own a gun in my own home?
I understand that. I'm just trying to. Average people don't understand why a federal law, so that there's more blanket enforcement state to state, because we do have varying gun laws, and I submit to you, Illinois has a very, very strict and in some cases overzealous enforcement that restricts the rights of law-abiding gun owners. I give you that. But there's no value in some sort of federal blanket background check. I know Dan's laughing at me. That would help slow the transmission of guns over state lines, or like I said, keep some of these unlicensed dealers, expose them more, bring them more into the mainstream, force them to be more law-abiding.
Well, number one, I don't think the drug laws are having much success on the heroin epidemic that's plaguing our country, and I would equate some of it to the same thing. The gangs seem to have no problem getting guns, but we don't see prosecutors. I mean, there was 2 years ago, maybe 3 now, prosecution for a straw purchase. A lady who bought around 5 firearms for her gang-banging friends, she got probation from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. You have a catch-and-release criminal justice system in Cook County. It's not the dealers that are the problem. If this individual in Tinley Park, then they ought to put more enforcement on things like that. Absolutely go after that. But, how long shall I have to wait for an approval from either the state police or the federal government so I can make a transaction? How long are you willing to make, a woman who is in fear for her life from a domestic abuser? She's done everything right. She has a piece of paper that says he can't come in at 1,000 yards of her, and he continues to stalk and harass her. How long is that individual? She has to wait, at least 60 business days to get a FOID card now. She has to wait 72 hours before she can pick up her first firearm. If Kathleen Willis has her way, she's going to have to pay $75 for a set of fingerprints so she can exercise a fundamental constitutional right. How much of that are you willing to put down for somebody to exercise their rights?
Todd, we're going to have to leave it there. Todd Vandermyde with the Federal Firearm Licensees of Illinois Association. Todd, thanks for joining us. Always appreciate the insights.
No problem, guys. Anytime.
Take care, Todd. And I just love Cook County because it's a microcosm of